Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Sylvaine, Nova, out March 4th on Season of Mist. This album has 6 tracks, 44 minutes in length, and this the band's 4 full-length studio album. They are a Norwegian, atmospheric, dark haze band. As far as the design goes, this album is flawless. It blends in 2 different approaches, 2 different styles, but it does it so perfectly that you don't even notice how this record is being put together and how it's being presented to the listener. On one hand, you feel like this album has an incredible sense of continuity. The way it transports the listener across its entire journey from the first to the last track, it's nearly seamless. But now that movement doesn't exist in the sound. This is not one of those records that one song bleeds into the next and it's very hard to define where one ended and where the next one started. This album has clear-cut borders. Every track has a beginning, middle, and end. So that sense of continuity exists from an atmospheric perspective, not sound. The atmosphere that this album has, it's very uniform. What drives the atmosphere is different. The emotion that drives each and every single song is different, but there's a sense of balance, and there's a sense of being very cohesive in terms of how you want the overall experience of the album to be. And that is definitely defined by the atmosphere of the entire record. Every song adds a little piece to that big puzzle. So it's a record that on one end feels very linear, very continuous, but on the other hand, you have a sense of break from track to track. These 2 ways of building the album really makes this record feel simple, easy to connect with, easy to digest, easy to navigate. And you see that from the start. The opening song, Nova, works from 2 different perspectives. Works as an intro, and it works as a track itself. From the intro side of things, you see the way it leads you into the album, opens the doors, gives you a chance to understand what the sound is going to be all about, what the vocals are going to be all about, what the atmosphere and emotion are going to be all about. And it also brings you into the second track of the album. It has that sense of an intro that escalates, that navigates, that takes you into the climax, and then the climax is that second song. But if you're listening to this track outside of the context of the record, you also see the merit that it has. You see the merit in the sound, in the atmosphere, and the vocals. So it works both ways. A perfect example of how the whole album is designed. It's designed in a way that you can listen to it from start to finish and feel connected with it, or you can take each and every single song individually and the merit and the quality is still there. As far as the soundscape or the sound experience on this album, I think we can use one word to define it: atmosphere. But I also don't think that word is enough to really paint the full picture of what this album is all about, because the sound on this record is driven by emotion, and then that emotion connected with the sound creates the atmosphere. That's how this album is designed. Everything is funneling to that point, is really moving you into that direction. It's also an album that feels very thin in its overall sound experience. It's not thick, it doesn't have volume. It's texture, but the texture doesn't really have substance. So it's not a very robust sounding record. It has a large footprint, it expands, sometimes contracts. This makes movement and allows the album to be more dynamic, to be more engaging, even though overall you'll always feel so lost within it that sometimes you even forget that the album is definitely taking you somewhere. But like I said, it's a very thin sounding record. Now this gives a sense of simplicity to the album, but it makes the album a lot easier to connect with. This record is one of those that you can sit back and you can completely lose yourself in the experience of listening to it. You can immerse yourself into that atmosphere, into that emotion that drives that atmosphere and the sound that's driven by that emotion. Or you could really start to break it down and see what everything is doing and see what all the pieces are coming together. So you can have a complete picture of what each and every single song is trying to tell you, but then overall the record as well. So I love this approach. I love this sense of simplicity. You can make a complex album feel simple, and when you do that, you're definitely going to connect with the listener. You're going to make the experience a lot more enjoyable. You're going to make the album feel a lot more fluid, and overall, all of these elements add to the overall playability that the album has. Now, to me, there are 2 elements that become the cornerstones of this record, and that is the guitars and vocals. When I look at the guitars, I love the sound, I love the experience, from the acoustic to the more fuzzy sound with a little bit more grit, with a little bit more dirt. But the guitars have so much life in terms of how they transport you from song to song, or even transport you within the songs, giving you different parameters, different perspectives, different sound emotions, if you will. But they really capture what this record is all about musically. They really help drive that nail home and make you understand exactly what's happening here. So the guitar sound is very important, is very underlined. It doesn't feel like it has to jump into the forefront. It doesn't feel like it has to take the spotlight, but it takes the spotlight regardless. And that is the beauty of it. And then on the other hand, you have the vocals. The vocals are nothing more than another instrument on this record. They're there to create atmosphere, to transmit that emotion that this album has, because this album is dripping in emotion, but it's there to transmit that emotion to the listener, not just through the lyrics that the songs have, but also to the way it's delivered. You can feel what they're singing about. You can feel what the songs are about. You can feel what the atmosphere of this record is about just by paying attention to the lyrics, just by paying attention to the vocals, and look in terms of how they're designed and how they're delivered. The clean vocals throughout this album are just out of this world. Sometimes they feel like just haze. They feel like a very thin mist that's part of everything that is happening. It's part of the sound, it's part of the atmosphere. So hard to define where one ends and where the other one starts. Then you have some songs where they have a little bit more intensity, where that emotion is brewing and coming a little bit more into the forefront. So they have a little bit more of a direct impact, and they come at you in a much different kind of way, not as subdued, more at the surface. And then you also have some screaming vocals that are sprinkled throughout the entire record. And those vocals are necessary in order for that emotion to finally come to the outside, because when you listen to this record, it feels a very introspective album. From all the different angles you look at it, from the sound, from the construction, from the vocal approach, the lyrics, the atmosphere, everything. It's an album that feels introspective. But you need to have some moments of clarity where you cannot hold those emotions anymore, you cannot hold those feelings anymore, and everything is going to brew up and come out just like a volcano. It needs to erupt. And that's exactly what those screaming vocals do throughout the entire record. So having them sprinkled throughout really helps the album have some ebbs and flows, and it helps the album be more dynamic vocally. So it's an album that's definitely dynamic musically, without pulling you up and down, without creating abrupt changes. The album has a lot of movement musically, but it also has a lot of movement vocally. It has different ways that you can perceive it. And this is what brings this record to life. It's a record that has a lot of life, but at the same time, it makes it feel like it's completely calm. This duality is just phenomenal throughout the entire existence of this album. This is a phenomenal album all around. It doesn't matter if you look at the way it's constructed, at the way it's built, at how it makes you feel, the sound, the vocals, how everything interacts, the lyrical content. It's just a flawless album from start to finish. An album that you can enjoy, like I said earlier, if you press play at the first song and you go all the way through, or you can just digest it on the individual song basis. It works either way. When you have quality music, it really doesn't matter how you listen to it. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Fortapt. Acoustic guitar at the beginning really sets the tone for what this track is going to be. And they use that approach commonly throughout the entire album. I like this approach because it starts to give you a sense of continuity without necessarily bleeding songs from one into the other. The vocals add some presence to how this song feels, specifically following those acoustic guitars. Then the sound grows. It gets bigger, but still very thin. It's not thick. It doesn't have heaviness. It just feels like it's getting larger and larger. It's expanding horizontally. It's becoming, the footprint of the song is becoming bigger and bigger. The fuzziness of the guitars really adds to that. It adds a little bit of grit. It adds a little bit of dirt. But the atmosphere that we saw in the beginning with the acoustic guitars stays on regardless of the sound changes that are happening throughout the track. You're just expanding the track. Now, pushing some screams into this song helps because you see the dynamic movement that the song has musically, and you need something on the other side of the vocals in order to match this same movement. So adding those screams really feel like an outburst of energy, an outburst of anger at times. It's just really uncontrolled for an album or for a specific song like this one that feels very controlled almost all the time. Having those vocals is a little bit of losing control, and you almost enjoy that to a certain extent. It's controlled chaos, if you will, but it makes the song very dynamic, like I said, musically and vocally, and the vocals all around are out of this world on this song. Next you have I Close My Eyes So I Can See. The title of this song defines the entire record. This album, you can close your eyes and you can see. You can see the picture that it paints through the sound, through the atmosphere, through its emotions. This song is perfect because it really captures that essence in one single track. It has that opening guitar that brings you into the song, caresses you into the song. It feels a little bit more layered than the previous track, definitely a little bit more textured. Musically, it has a little bit more volume, still not thick, not heavy, just more volume, larger footprint. Vocally, there's a sense of direction. There's a sense of purpose. With the previous track, I felt like the vocals were more of an atmospheric element. They were more of a haze, a mist that was blended into everything that was happening musically in the track. On this one, I didn't feel that way. I felt like the vocals were a little bit ahead of the sound and they were more directing the experience. They were more guiding the listener in terms of where you are and where they want to take you. It makes the song feel like it has more movement. It also makes the song feel like it has more power. It never stays in a single place at any given time. This track is very volatile. It's constantly growing, constantly morphing, contracting, expanding. Also adding the screaming vocals into this song adds intensity. It really feels like the intensity level is increased. The emotion level really is coming to the forefront. You cannot control this track. It feels very raw and emotional from start to finish, vocally, more vocally than musically. Last but not least, Everything Must Come to an End. This is the closing track on the album, and it's a phenomenal closing track for a couple of reasons. One, the vocals are a perfect breeze. On this song, the vocals come in as a breeze. It's like somebody's talking to you through the wind. Phenomenal vocal approach for a song that closes the album. Definitely gives you a sense of finality. You have that on one end. The second aspect of this song that makes this a great closing track is the use of violins. The violins throughout this song just has this sense of finality to it. It almost brings a dark death feel to how this song ends and how it closes the album. Everything must come to an end. Everything. The record, life, the way you feel towards somebody, the way you feel towards something. The violins really paint a vivid picture of that finality, of that end on a song that closes the record. I love the vocals, I love the violins, I love the overall sound, the composition, the structure, the design, the emotion, the atmosphere. This is an incredible track all around. It really makes you feel something. Even the person that has absolutely zero feelings, listen to this song, you will feel something. Your skin will crawl, you'll get goosebumps. It's an incredible track that closes an incredible album. This is it. Sylvaine with Nova, out March 4th on Season of Mist. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.